Hello guys, welcome to another video of Azure DevOps. In this video, we are going to understand and see how we can create the Python web app, how we can build and create the pipeline for Python web app. We will do everything from scratch. This you can also say this is a kind of real-time project which generally most of the organization do if they have requirement to create and deploy the web apps, function app, logic apps, and whatever they do. Generally, they follow this approach to create their function app, web apps, and whatever, and even any other application as well. This is how they follow. So this is also the real-time project for creating the CI and CD pipeline. If you are preparing for job interview or DevOps engineer interview and even Azure developer interview, you can watch this video and understand how generally uh, projects are built using CI/CD pipelines, Microsoft Azure, and how they are being deployed in real-time world and in the organizations. This will also help you to understand the real-time scenarios and it will help you to answer all the questions which you might get in your interview. Okay, so let's begin the video. Here are the tasks we'll be doing in this video. This is the real-time project to build and deploy the Python web app from scratch. I will explain each and everything while building the our application, while building my Python code, and each and everything while deploying as well. Okay, so first thing we'll be creating the Python web app in Azure. Second thing, we'll be cloning the Python web app code. I already have this cloned. Okay, you can if you have this cloned, you can do it. Else, you'll get many sample Python code in the internet. You can clone any of them. Okay. After that, we will create CI and CD pipeline. I will explain all the pipeline concepts and we'll deploy the pipeline. And finally, we will see after browsing the application and web app if it is really working or not. Okay. So first, let's go ahead and do the first one. Create one Python web app in Azure. This is my Azure portal. If you don't have it already, you can go and watch my previous videos how we can create Microsoft Azure free account and how you can access other applications as well in Microsoft Azure. Okay, to create one account, let's type web app here, or even you can type app service. Let's open this app services. This is app service is nothing but web app. Click on create. Here you have multiple options: web app, static web app plus database, WordPress on app service. So based on your requirement, you can do that. But our requirement was create one web app. So click on create web app. Select the subscription. You can select your resource group, whatever resource group your organization might be using, or if you are using doing this for demo purpose, you can create your own resource group. Okay, I don't have any, so we will create one. Let me first type the name itself. Type something like this. So this is my Python web app name. You can type whatever you want based on your requirement, and even you can follow your organization policy as well, naming convention policy. This is the resource group. Let it be the default. You can create your own resource group as well. Okay. And the publish should be code because we will be deploying the code in our web app. You can do it from containers as well. Okay, you can select the Azure container registry and all if you want. But for now, we will be selecting the code because we are creating CI/CD pipeline and deploying our code. Select the runtime stack. This is the important one. You will have to select your runtime. What type of code you are deploying. If you are deploying for .NET, you should be selecting the .NET, Java, Node, PHP. In this tutorial, we are building the Python. So we will be selecting the Python. We will be using Python 3.11 because we have this code. Okay. The next is operating system. Python, the default will be Linux because Python is compliant with Linux. Select the region where you want to create your web app. After that, let's create the Linux plan. Pricing plan you can select based on your requirement. If you don't want to use premium, you can select the basic or free tiers as well based on the requirement. If you are doing it for demo or learning purpose, you can select in free tier. Okay. Zone redundancy, we don't need to keep it enabled because in production cases we generally keep it enabled. If you are doing it for demo, we don't need to keep it. Next is database. We are not attaching any database, so leave this as default. Deployment, let this continuous deployment, let it be disabled and everything. If you want to enable this as well with GitHub, you can do this. Keep this in networking. We will be enabling public access. If you want a web app with some like virtual network integration, you can do that as well. You can watch my previous Microsoft Azure videos for that. But for this demo, we'll be just creating one public web app. Monitor plus secure, let it be the default. Tags, review plus create, everything should be the default. Okay, let it be default. Enable application insight. Application insight will be created. Next, tags, default, and finally review plus create. This will validate if all the settings which you have given here is correct. If everything is fine, then it will give you option to create. Let it create. This will first initialize the deployment and submit it. Once submitted, it will create one deployment with some random name and it will create the web app for you. Once created, you can go and behave your web app. Meanwhile, this is creating, we'll see our repository as well where our code is. This is my deployment. You can see this is created and it will create each of the resources one by one. Let it create. It will take a minute. By the time we will see our repository as well. I have this Python sample VS Code repository where I have this Python code. You can see this is my requirement.txt file which we will use to build this Python application. I already have made videos about building the Python web app as well. I have shown the same repository where I have configure all the steps to build the Python. But again, I am showing this because this is kind of real-time project and I am doing everything from scratch. Okay, I have this startup.txt which generally we will use while deploying the application and we'll supply this file in the arguments. Okay, if you see, I have this hello app, all the files here, and I have one Azure pipelines.yaml. I have this YAML file ready already, which will build and deploy the function app or not the function app, this web app. I will explain each of the steps, whatever we are doing in here, okay, from scratch. Let's see if web app is deployed. You can see this is deployed. If you click on deployment details, this has created everything. Let me click on go to resource. If you click on it, you will get all the things here. You can see from scratch like networking, certificates and all. Let it load. Once this is loaded, let me refresh it. Once this is done, I will browse this. There will be one web app URL. I will browse it and show you this is working. So this is the default domain. If you click on it, this is just empty. It is saying your web app is running and waiting for your content. So we don't have anything here in the web app yet. Okay. Once our application is deployed, our application will show up here if we open this URL. Okay. This is our web app URL. So now let's go to the repository. Here we have all the Python code and all the dependencies as well, which generally we use to build the application. Let me now go ahead and create one pipeline. If you go to pipelines, click on new pipeline. So this will create one new pipeline for you. Let me open the Azure repository Git. Here select your repository. You should be selecting your repository where your Python code is, or whatever. If you're building the .NET or Java application, make sure you are selecting that repository. Okay. So since we already have this Azure pipelines.yaml, this pipeline is already coming here. If you don't have it, then it will give you option to create a new pipeline, or this will give you to select some existing pipeline YAML inside your repository. Okay, so this is my pipeline. I will explain each of the steps here. We have given trigger as none because I don't want to automatically trigger this pipeline. If you want to enable continuous integration, then you should be giving the something like this here. If you want to give some branch name, you can include the branches as well. Suppose you want to give the main branch, you can give something like this. Okay, you can give release branch as well. You can give other branch names. Whatever branches you have, you can specify everything here like this. If you just have single branch, you can give here as well, or you can just give none. Okay, and you can add other things as well, like if you have requirement to add path or tags based on that, you can enable that as well. So let it be none for now. We are disabling the automatic trigger of this pipeline. If you are adding main here, whenever some developer made the commit in main branch, this pipeline will be automatically triggered. Generally, in most of the cases, production cases, it should be enabled, or generally it should be enabled from your main branch or development branch, so that whenever developer changes the commit or made commit in some particular branch, this pipeline should be triggered automatically. This should build your code and this should deploy as well. Okay, so to enable that, generally we use this trigger to enable the continuous integration. Okay, the next is pool. This is the agent pool which generally we use whenever we create the pipelines. Our job will run inside this pool. Ubuntu latest, which is Microsoft hosted agent pool. If you have your self-hosted agent pool, you can add that as well. But since I have this Microsoft hosted, I have added it here. If your organization wants you to use only self-hosted agent pool, you can create the self-hosted agent pools by going into the project settings. Let me go back. By going into the project settings, here go to agent pools. and from here you can create the agent pools, something like this, and you can directly use your agent pool here. Okay, once this is done, you can directly even include these steps as well. If you have single pipeline, like if you are creating pipeline to just build your Python application, then you can create this. Or if you are creating separate pipelines for uh, building your Python application, and you if you have a separate pipeline to deploy that application, in that case you can directly just use the steps. I have added stages here because this is multi-stage pipeline, you can say. In this stage itself, or in this pipeline itself, we have multiple stages. The first stage I am using here is to build the application, or build my Python web app. And if you see the second stage, which I am using, is to deploy. Okay, so this is multi-stage pipeline. If someone asks you like what is multi-stage pipeline, you can answer this. If there are multiple stages in a pipeline, we can say that is multi-stage pipeline. Generally, in most of the cases, people use this kind of pipeline. Generally, they build their code in same pipeline and even deploy that in same pipeline. Here I have one deploy stage, but if you have multiple stage, like if you have multiple environments like dev, staging, pre-production, and production, you can create multiple stages like this. Suppose this is for dev stage. You can create another stage, something like this, and give this stage name as pre-prod. So this will deploy your pre-production web app. Okay. And if you have another stage like production as well, you can copy the same thing and you can deploy the production stage as well. Okay, you just have to change some of the parameters, like you have to change the application name. If there are some application setting based on the environment, you have to change that as well, along with this Azure subscription, because this should be generally different for your uh, QA and production and pre-production. Okay, so these all you can parameterize it, and rest everything should be the same. Let's remove this because we don't need many stages. We will be just deploying one single stage that you can consider either as development environment, production, or whatever. Okay, you can follow the same approach to deploy multiple environments as well. Okay, let's go to the pipeline. This is our pipeline. Think we have still multiple stages. Let me refresh that so that everything else will be deleted. So since we are creating multi-stage pipeline, I have given the stages here. Okay, I have already made videos how we can add the stages. Let me just type it for you as well here. So simply, if you type stages, just it will give you option for to add the stages, multi stages. Give the stage, make sure your indentation is correct in YAML, otherwise it will give you error. It is highlighting this duplicate key because we already have the stages here. Okay, so something like this, you can define the stages. After that, you can define the jobs in this. Once this is done, you can give this hyphen and job. After that, you can generally follow all the steps and you can add all the tasks. So these type of templates generally we follow to create the YAMLs. I have already made multiple videos on YAML pipelines. You can go and watch that if you need to understand how we create the YAML templates. Okay, I will explain everything here, like whatever I have configured in this template. So the first stage is build, and you can include multiple jobs here in one stage, but I have only one job because I am just building it. So we just have created this set of steps in my single job. Okay, in multiple jobs you can in one single job you can have one job, and uh, mm, let me correct myself, like in one job you can have multiple steps. Okay, and in jobs you can have multiple jobs. Like this type of job you can create multiple job. So since we are just building it, I have only one job in this pipeline in this build stage. Okay, so in this format, like after the steps, you can say this is the task which I am using to download the Python 3.11 version, for which we have created this web app. Okay, once Python 3.11 is downloaded in web app, I am running this set of commands to build my code. You can see we are downloading the dependencies, we are installing the pip, and we are supplying this requirement.txt file to install all the requirements and dependency, and finally supplying the working directory where our code will be processed and built. Okay, so once build is done, we are archiving the files. Archiving means we are just zipping the file. Generally we use zip deploy in web app or function apps to deploy our application. Archive files means we are just zipping it, we are supplying the root folder. So this is the folder which where we have built our code. Okay, and the same folder we are supplying it here. We have other properties as well, and file, this is the file, this will be the output file which we are archiving, and file name will be generated with this one. Remember this because we will use this later while uploading the artifact. Okay, if you have to, suppose you are not comfortable with YAML and you don't want everything like how you have this, you can always click on setting and you will get all the things in UI. You can change it based on your requirement, and again you can click on add so that this YAML will be changed automatically. Okay, once this is done, we are publishing the artifact with this publish artifact command. Here you can see the path, the same path where our file is there, like build.buildid.zip, and same path we are publishing in the container, and artifact name is drop. So if you see the publish build artifact, I will show you where you can see it. There will be artifact name that is called drop, and inside that drop our artifact with build.buildid.zip will be there. I will show you there in some time. Okay, the next stage we have is deploy stage, and this is the stage which will be used to deploy our web app inside this web app in Azure which we have just created. Okay, we'll supply everything here like this web app name. Okay, and everything we have given the display name, like all the things we can supply in each stage. The next is depends on, we will have to provide the depends on because this stage will depends on the build. Okay, if you are not providing this depends on, this deploy stage and build stage will run on parallel, and this pipeline will be failed because uh, once code is built, then only your deployment stage should run, because this will download the same code which you have built. So make sure you are adding depends on and run this pipeline. Since I have only one stage, I'm making the depends on only on build. If you have multiple stage, like if you suppose this is development stage, you have another stage for pre-prod, another one for production. Make sure prod is dependent on pre-prod and pre-prod is dependent on QA. QA is dependent on dev stage and dev should be dependent on build, so that this will just make the flow correct. Like once code is built, automatically it will go ahead to deploy into the dev. Once development is complete, it will deploy the QA. QA is complete, pre-production, and finally it will go ahead and deploy in the production. So this should be the flow of deploying your code. Okay. After that, again we have the jobs, and since we are using the deployment job, we have this deployment hyphen deployment. We can supply the environment which generally we use to add the approvals. If you go to the environments here, you will we get everything. Suppose this is my environment name. If you see, you can add multiple things like approvals, branch control. You can integrate service now change management. You can invoke function apps. You can add multiple things here. So for that purpose, we include the environments in YAML pipeline. In classic pipeline, generally you get all of this in EY, so you don't need the environments. Okay, after this we are just using the strategy. You can use multiple strategy as well. We'll be using this run once and finally the deploy stage. And in this deploy we have multiple steps. Like in build we had the jobs, in deployment jobs you have this deploy, and here as well we have included multiple steps, something like this. This step is again to use the Python 3.11 version, because we are using the same version while creating and while building the application. Okay, the next task is the main one, which is being used to deploy your web app inside this Azure created one. Okay, so this is the task Azure web app. If you don't know how to get all these tasks, simply just type hyphen task. Indentation is incorrect, that's why it is highlighting error. Once this is done, just type Azure web app and it will give you this task again. And after that you can add other things as well, like condition, display name, enable environment, inputs. Generally we supply the inputs. You have to supply all, not all, but some of the mandatory things are like app name, app type, Azure subscription. These are some of the things which you will have to provide, like package as well. So like this you can add all these tasks. If you don't know these like how we can add this YAML, simply you can search here as well, like Azure web app. You will get this task, Azure web app, Azure app service deploy. You can use this task as well. You can use Azure web app task as well. So simply click on this, you select your subscription, something like this. You select your app type, you just provide app name here. Suppose this is my Python web app, because it is coming here since we have this Azure subscription in here. You'll have to provide the package folder and all, and just click on add, and it will just add one task for you. Okay, so I just showed you how you can add it. Let me now explain this. This is the same task which just I was showing you how you can add it. Azure web app task, display name, and inputs. Here we have given multiple things. The first one is Azure subscription. This is nothing but the service connection. Generally, if you are deploying something externally from your Azure pipeline, you have to create the service connection so that your pipeline will be able to connect to that third party external service with that service. Suppose if you are integrating Sonar Cube on even or even this Microsoft Azure pipeline will should have some medium to connect with that Azure or even Sonar Cube, right? So for that purpose, you will have to create the service connection. Service connection generally helps your pipeline to connect with some external service like SonarQube, Microsoft Azure, or Nexus repository. If you are integrating anything, then you will have to create the service connection. To create it, you will have to go to the project setting. This is my project setting. Here, if you go in service connection, and you can have multiple types of service connections here. You can create any of them. If you have to create it new, click on new service connection, select the Azure Resource Manager, and you can select it here. Like what type of, note this one. For Azure, generally you can select this Azure Resource Manager one, and here like what type of scope level you want. Subscription, you can select the subscription. You can provide your resource group name, service connection name, service management reference, and other things. And once you have saved it, you will be able to create the service connection. I have created videos on it as well previously. You can go and watch that. So once you have created this service connection, you can directly add it here. Or if you are not comfortable in YAML, just click on this setting and you will get the UI, and you can select your service connection here inside the Azure subscription. Okay, so make sure you are selecting it. Once you have selected, and app type is web app on Linux, since we have created the Linux web app. If this is for .NET, we might have created for Windows, so in that case you can select web app on Windows. But this is Python, and we have to this web app on Linux. App name is something like this. What is our web app? Web app hyphen Python hyphen 01. If you select this service connection, then this app name will automatically come here. Okay, if you are using something else, then make sure this service connection should have access to this resource group or this resource, then only this will work. Otherwise it won't be able to deploy your application. So make sure you have the necessary permissions before making. If you are directly creating it from the Azure DevOps portal, it will do everything for you. It will add the subscription inside your resource group. It will add the permissions, required permission inside the resource group, so you don't have to do anything by yourself. Okay, we have given the app name as well. This is my app name, and here you will have to specify the package or folder. So this is my package name, drop, and build.buildid.zip. Inside drop folder I have this build.buildid.zip, because if you see, I have published this path directly inside my container. I'll show you once I run this pipeline. I will show you where you can check if build.buildid.zip is being published or not. Okay, once this is done, you select the runtime stack. If you click on this drop down, you get multiple things like Node, Ruby, .NET Core, Python, .NET Core, whatever, PHP, Go, what type of web app you want to deploy, you will get all the options here. Since we have Python and version is 3.11, we have selected this. And finally this startup.txt command which need to start this web app. Okay, we have this txt file inside our repository. If you go here and see, I have this startup.txt file which will be used to start my web app. Okay, you can click on add and this task will be automatically added inside your pipeline. Okay, so our pipeline is complete. This pipeline will first build this. If you notice the pipeline, we have two stages. If you just minimize this, we have this stages block. If you expand it, we have one stage that is build, where we are building our code. If you see, we have three tasks. This is to download the Python. This is to build and install all the requirements and dependency. This is to zip the file, zip the artifact, and this is to publish the artifact. We have all this set of tasks in one single stage. Minimize it, and we have another stage as well just to deploy it. Okay, again in the same stage we have this use Python version task which will download the Python, and we have this task Azure web app task which will deploy our web app inside the Azure web app hyphen python hyphen 01 web app which we have created. Okay, this is another stage. Okay, we have two stage in this pipeline, so we can say this is multi-stage pipeline. You can add other stages as well. Since I'm just using one environment to deploy, I have just created one stage. If you have multiple stages like QA, pre-production and production, you can add those stages and you can use this pipeline to deploy in all of your stages, all of the environments. Okay, so generally this type of pipeline most of the organization create uh, in their production environment or in their live environment to deploy their Python application or any type of application in Microsoft Azure or even any other cloud as well like AWS, GCP. Generally though they follow this approach. Another approach they follow is they create just one stage. Suppose this is build stage, and they create this stage in one pipeline that they call as CI pipeline or build pipeline, or you can say continuous integration pipeline. And this stage deploy stage they will create in separate pipeline that they will call as a release pipeline or continuous deployment pipeline or continuous delivery pipeline. Okay, so generally they divide these in multiple pipelines, basically in two pipelines. One pipeline is to build, run the scans and run the unit test cases. That is just the build pipeline, and another pipeline will be just deploying the code. So you can separate this as well. I just have used both the stages and both all of these in single pipeline, and you can do in multiple pipelines as well. So these two approach generally most of the organizations follow in their CI/CD approach. Okay, we have done it. Let's save and run this pipeline. We have everything. I think we have done something. Let it refresh. We had this pipeline already. So now this, see, we have all the task and everything ready. We have web app hyphen python hyphen 01. Okay, this is our pipeline name. Sorry, this is our web app name. Everything is correct. Okay, let's now run this pipeline. So first this will create the pipeline, and you can see since we have used two stage, this is coming as two stage pipeline. First stage is build and another one is deploy web app. If you create multiple stage, it will all the stages will come here in this UI. Okay, and you can see deploy web app is dependent on build. Once build is run, then only this deploy web app stage will run. And this should be the ideal scenario, right? Because this should not run in parallel, or deploy web app should not run before the build stage, because this is dependent. Deploy web app stage is dependent on build stage. Okay, you can see this build stage is done. That means our code should have build and published as well. This is published here. If you click on one published, this is published, you can see this is the drop folder, and our 231.zip is published here. Okay, this is the build id. 231 is the build id. If you go back, and you can say build id is 231. That's why this has published 231.zip. That will contain all the files whatever you need to run your web app. Okay, and this is asking to provide the permission. Since we have created this pipeline for the first time, let's go ahead and provide the permission to use this service connection and to use this environment name. Okay, I have permitted it, and now this should go ahead and run this as well. You can see the pool image, whatever we have provided in the pipeline, it is using the same. Okay, it will download the artifact, it will use the Python version, and finally it will deploy Azure web app. Okay, package deployment using zip deploy initiated. It will take maybe 1 minute or even less than that, and it will deploy our web app here in this. If you open it right now, will be getting the default page, something like this. uh, but after some time, generally we should get our main code, main web app, whatever we have given and whatever we have supplied inside the code. Let's wait for some time. So this example I have given is to include all the pipeline to build and deploy in single pipeline. You can create it multiple ways as well. You can create two pipelines. One is to just to build it, and another one is to deploy it. And you can enable the continuous integration and continuous deployment, so that your pipeline will be triggered automatically. Okay, you will have to enable trigger to auto trigger your pipeline. That should be flow. Whenever developer made the commit, your continuous integration pipeline or build pipeline should trigger automatically. That should build the code, run the unit test cases, run SonarQube scans, or whatever scans if you want to run. And it should publish the artifact in artifact repository. That can be Nexus repository, JFrog, or Azure pipeline. Once that is done, your release pipeline or deployment pipeline should trigger automatically, and it should go ahead and deploy your uh, application or code of your application in each of the environment. Okay, that can be dev, staging, QA, pre-production, and production. So generally this is the this is the approach and CI/CD workflow most of the organization use now, at the moment. And if you get questions something like this, you should be explaining the flow something like this in your case. Okay, now you can say package deployment using zip deploy initiated. Deploy logs can be viewed at here. Successfully deployed web app to app service, and this is trying to update the app service configuration setting, like Linux FX version, Python 3.11, which we had supplied, and app command line is startup.txt, which we had given in the argument. Okay, this is still running, so let's wait for some more time. Till that time, let's go to Azure and check the environment variables, what are the variables we have. If you go to the configuration before this, you'll be able to see the Python web app which we have created. So this is the Python 3 and Python 3.1 was web app is created. If you go to environment variables, you can see the Linux FS version, and the one which we have added here in the logs, it will show directly here. You can see now the everything is complete, deployment is complete, and our pipeline is complete as well. And this is our app service application URL which is being shown here as well. If you go in the overview page, now open this URL and let's see what it shows. Oh, you can see this is our application. This was just for the minor application tutorial one, and it is not now showing the default web page, but the code of application whatever we have given, built, and deployed it here. Okay, so this is our application. You can see it is running successfully in the Python web app, in Azure web app. Whatever we created, we built it and we deployed it. Okay, so that's it from this video. We have seen everything about web apps, how we can create the web apps in Microsoft Azure. I showed you the example of Python, but if you have requirement like .NET Java as well, you can create them as well. Okay, after this we seen this Python code, and we have seen the Python pipeline as well, how we built it, how we downloaded the Python, how we zipped it, published it, and in multi-stage pipeline we created and deployed this Python web app in our web app Python 01 web app as well. And finally we have seen by browsing the web app that this is successfully working. So this is the CI/CD workflow. Most of the organization, not most, you can say all of the organization follow in their projects. So make sure if you are preparing for DevOps interview, you are ready to answer these kind of questions and ready to explain these type of scenarios while answering your questions about CI/CD and real-time projects. Okay, that's it from this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe my channel. If you have any feedback, suggestions or questions, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.